Could be, like, could have gone, Bob's in conflict, so I figured I'd tell you.
Today is election day. It's November 4th. It's 2 p.m. This is a Durango City Council study session. And could we have the, what do you call it?
Roll call?
Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Woodruff,
Here.
Councilor Beal,
Here.
Mayor Yazzie,
Here.
Councilor Koso,
Here.
and Councilor Gonzalez. The next item on the agenda is the reading of the land acknowledgement.
This is a call to honor and respect Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination. As residents and visitors of Durango, we are called upon to educate ourselves about the history and cultural heritage of the land we inhabit. The city of Durango is situated on the ancestral homelands and territories of the Nuchu, Ute, Jicarilla Apache, Pueblos of New Mexico, Hopi-Sinom, Hopi, and Dene Navajo nations. The original stewards of this land were forcibly removed and exposed to countless atrocities by the United States government, including repeatedly broken treaties, forced assimilation, the tragic legacy of Indian boarding schools, and the loss of ancestral homelands. We recognize lasting generational trauma exists within Native communities today. We affirm the continuing importance of ancestral sites to descendant communities as integral to the living cultural landscape. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed actions. May this serve as a step toward inclusion and reconciliation.
And the next item on the agenda is the 2026 budget reconciliation.
Can I ask Mayor how we want to conduct this? If we want to let the staff do the full 2 hours or full presentation and then go back and ask questions, or if we could have perhaps pauses in between and ask questions in sections?
How did you prepare for this session? Did you?
I'm prepared where I can pause if desired. There are sections, yes.
Okay, when you find it, you can pause and then we'll go ahead and let people ask questions. But
Great.
keep a note of your questions.
Yep.
I'll try to glance around and read the room. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It seems like just a few days ago that we met on October 13th at the budget retreat to go through the City Manager's 2026 proposed budget. So this item's purpose this afternoon is for the council to review reconciliation changes included for consideration. And all of these updates do apply to the operating budget. So this budget does align with our mission and values statement. We do strive to provide outstanding service to the entire community by allocating resources to different services and projects. So here we have our presentation outline, which shows kind of how we will go through the presentation. So first we will have revenue adjustments. Then we have each goal area. This is how we have the expense adjustments organized. And then at the end, we will have a fund summary. So first, to consider the revenues that were adjusted, there were three. The first one is in the general fund for building permits. This was an increase of $65,000, and this was really a correction. This had been left flat inadvertently. Airport revenues have been increased for $184,771. This was really an adjustment that was made to rates by the airport commissions. They affirmed these rates and charges, and we didn't have that completed yet by the time of the budget retreat to include those. Also, the self-insurance fund. This is just an adjustment as we reconciled to reflect the accurate contributions by the department. So this was also an increase in the amount of $153,600. So next we will go through the expense section that are organized by the goal area. First, we have our goal area of organizational stewardship. This slide shows all of the departments in that goal area. However, not all of them are being updated. This slide does show the updates here. We had a slight change in the city manager's department as we noticed that there were some dues that were actually included in the council's department budget of $1,860 that we moved to the correct department for city manager. And thank you, Councilor Kosa, for having us look through those, and we did find that adjustment. Next, we had some changes in the non-departmental department. We had in this area inadvertently cut some expenses as we were going through all of the department cuts that we had made. We did cut some expenses that were for the museum renovations and repairs and the energy performance contracts, which we added those back for $155,557. And so these are both general fund departments. So the effect here on the general fund is an increase. It shows as an increase at 1860 because we don't have the council in a specific goal area since you serve the entire city. But the change here is $157,417. So the next update is under innovative housing and economic development goal. And the changes here, we did have some reductions to the community events portion of, this is a general fund department. These reductions were actually, we had met with the department with those overall department cuts and had been provided. So this was part of that and had been left off during the budget retreat. So these are included now or decreased now for an amount of $48,450. This is made up of $10,150 in cuts. And then, as you can see in the lower row there, $38,300 was moved to Lodgers Fund. Additionally, in this goal, we had a change in the housing fund, and this was a decrease of $537. So the net effect to this goal is $9,613, a decrease. So this seems like a good place to talk about the lodgers tax since we've introduced it. And so we did have a discussion at the budget retreat regarding available funds for the council determination of $364,622 that had been left in fund balance from the prior years. So it did seem that the council responded positively to adding this to the budget to be available for these projects that had been submitted by the departments. As discussed, the proposals had totaled $715,000. The revenues expected for the year are $446,773, and adding the fund balance that is available of $364,000 there makes the total funds available in the budget $811,395. So we did go through these these programs, proposals that the departments had submitted at the budget retreat. Council had given some positive feedback regarding including all of them in the budget. So the amount is budgeted currently. If we would prefer to have further discussion on that, we can definitely do this at a future meeting. Again, the costs are included in the budget. If we want to designate that differently, we can discuss that further.
This may be a time for a pause to see what the council thinks of the information on this one, since this is absolutely a council item.
Okay, looks like Kip, you got your hand up.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'll take some guidance from council, but my perception was that the study session was the best time to really talk about changes that we might want to see, lodgers tax impacts, all the rest of that stuff. So Do we know what there was an original requested amount for childcare funding that was above the 260K number. Do we remember what that initial starting number was?
I do not.
Okay. There was a higher number though. I'm not misremembering that.
There was a higher number that was submitted so 260 was the original number that was always spoken about. The number that we saw when we were going into the budget was a higher number.
Okay.
I then reached out to Sarah Tober and asked her, like, so we'd always been talking about 260. This number was different, and they put it back to 260.
Okay, great. I do believe there's a couple of these projects that don't merit the funding. The minimum revenue guarantee, I've had multiple discussions with multiple individuals. I'm currently serving on the airport commission as well. So the conversation is probably between council at some point, but United Airlines is doing incredibly well at this point. They're already expanding their service a few months outside of what their traditional has been. It feels to me like 185,000 allocated for a very successful airline endeavor right now is not a useful use for the lodgers tax at this point as well. I also have some concerns that we're throwing so much money into the Meridian barriers. I'm happy to have the discussion about it, but those are the two areas that I feel like we're spending money that isn't appropriate. And then there are certainly some ideas out there that could be used, the lodgers tax funding could be used for both ideas that may be viable now from staff that didn't make the original cut, or I think there's some merit in us putting a pin on some of the funds and getting some feedback on better usage of the lodgers tax money for us to spend in 2026.
Just to confirm, I'm sorry, you finished up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm looking for a little bit of discussion.
Sure. So, city manager, sure, I just wanted to get a clarification. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to step on your toes with your hand raised. Okay, I apologize. It's been a day. So we have a public hearing open for the budget this evening, and then we have 2 more meetings to approve the budget by the first week of December. Is that correct?
Yes,
And so there is no second meeting in the month of December.
that's correct. So the public hearing that we're having later tonight is by state law that I have to have a public hearing on my proposed budget. So that is just an open and closed public hearing. On your agenda today, you will have a introduction of ordinance for the appropriations of the operating expenditure or operating budget, and then the appropriation of the capital budget. There will not be action on that, it'll just be introduced. You will have the next council meeting will be first consideration. At that point, amendments that the council may want to make would be appropriate to be placed onto that. And then the first reading in December would be the final reading.
So, and the reason I ask is that because we have to have a budget approved by December 31st, correct?
Yes.
No later than. And so whatever we decide to deviate from for the lodgers tax, that will be a decision that we have to make with no background information on what other proposed ways to spend this money, right? So we won't be able to get like a presentation from staff my whole point is that the conversation would have to have
A very
should
short
be
timeline.
a very short timeline and whatever we decide. So I guess there's a concern that we potentially wouldn't be able to vet something that came, I wouldn't say spontaneously, but kind of came in front of some other things that were presented on it. I don't disagree that there's maybe better ways to spend this money.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're putting our due diligence in to make sure that we are spending the right money in the right way and to benefit not only the taxpayers, but also to ensure that we're remaining in the spirit of the lodgers tax being spent in the most appropriate manner.
There's a couple ways we could go about this. And so just for the council, you fund at the fund level, right? So you don't necessarily have to have all of this figured out now. The funding will still be there. Now you could come back and say, yeah, these are great. Let's just go ahead and go with that. Or you could say at first consideration that somebody makes an amendment, let's per se, and say, I'd like to just fund these certain ones and then come back in January to have a bigger discussion. Or it could be like that we will just come back in January and the first meeting, a council meeting, and have a full blown presentation on other things outside of these of where you want to go. I just want to make sure that the council, like, budget doesn't have to be absolutely perfect and pretty with everything that we know. If there's certain areas that we want to have later discussions on, you can always make an amendment to say, we would like to have more of a discussion on that. So I just don't want to feel like there's like, you have to, this is it, this is where you go, especially since it's council determination. If it's something that you all want to wait until January before we spend, we can't spend it without your approval anyways.
Okay, well, that,
And it's a question to pin onto that is how did this balance build up? Is this over years? This has been extra money that has just sat in there. So
Yes.
holding a balance in these accounts has not been something we haven't. I mean, we've been doing that already.
yeah,
We can.
There's merit in that.
thank you for the clarification. Sorry,
Pleasure.
Charlie.
So I guess, Jose, your comments, I think, have given some clarity because I know there was a request for Powerhouse, which I thought was a great use, given that they're already moving along. It's a city-owned facility. It's related to childcare. They're moving along fairly quickly. Is it an eligible request?
What request are,
For Powerhouse they requested like 280,000 for childcare.
I don't recall a childcare request from Powerhouse. They did some maintenance.
They did come in.
I think that was a matching grant that they were trying to raise funds for they were getting matching funds from the
That's
state.
correct.
So
That's
yeah, I
correct.
don't know
Is
if
that
there's a
an
deliberate
eligible
ask from council, but
Oh, yes. No, it was an ask.
it was.
Yes, there was a request, and that was for renovations, if I'm following the question properly, to the museum. And so that was one of those reconciling items that mentioned that we had inadvertently cut part of that. And so that is included in the budget. It was actually over 2 years, 26 and 27. So we have half of that included in the 2026 budget. in the
Okay, so it's already funded
What,
in a
there's-
different,
I think we're talking two things.
Yes.
What we've funded is the actual request that we received for Powerhouse, which was for the renovations and maintenance expenditures that they're asking for us for the building. I have not received a request from them on anything related to childcare.
wasn't the request that he made here? Was that, maybe it's the same thing? And I understood
Are you-
it to be for
Okay,
childcare.
the childcare request here was for La Plata Economic
The
Development
Alliance.
Here, okay.
Mhm.
for 2
Okay,
years.
well, as long, I thought that was a good use of funds, given that it's a city-owned facility and they were requesting the match as Councilor Woodruff mentioned. So I guess just, I don't know if, I mean, just regarding the winter air service, I feel like we could have a little more discussion, but perhaps now is not the more appropriate time. Is Mike here or?
I don't know if Mike is online or not. I do believe, can you see Tom? Or well, Tony, I think is at a conference.
But if there's time to discuss it.
Oh, there's
later.
absolutely time. to
So, I mean,
discuss
I
on it.
think that's just something that I was trying to understand how that, I think it's important given the visitor experience, but I would like to perhaps have a more discussion about it. So, and I guess even just regarding the Meridian Barrier, I mean, only because Counselor mentioned those two. I mean, once you buy them, like we have them, right? And they don't turn over. They don't have a shelf life per se. Like once we have them now, we can have them for many years to come. Do they have like 10 years of life?
I
Or-
think Chief Current might be able to help us with the barriers in which we use them, which are usually for when we close our streets, specifically for one that comes top to mind, snow down.
Snow down, and we used them for the 2030 event. Is that correct?
Yeah, we use them for multiple events and different arrays.
And so if we buy them now, we'll have them for 10
That's
years
correct.
or however long. And we have a place to store them and to keep them, and that's not a problem. If you get them all that you need today, you have time to store them or rather not time, but place to store them.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, we won't have all we need today. I mean, we have, we need 150 of them probably to have all we need. But realistically, we can work under the parameters we have by utilizing other things and keep the places that we need to keep the safest with what we have. I think we're requesting, we currently have 18. We're requesting 6 more for out of a total of 24. And we can continue to add to that to 150. But 150 would really be like the sidewalks, everything. You can have vehicles parked and different things. You can do it a lot of different ways. We use the train also too. And so realistically, it depends on what level you're looking at.
Well, just given that we know we're going to have more events coming up with 2030, they last a long time. Once you buy them, we have them for many years to come. So it seems like a good investment. So those two were, I guess, mentioned for discussion. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mayor.
Chip.
Mayor, thanks. So I guess there's a process for council to start talking about individual items that we might want to see instead of some of these. There's also just the quizzing back and forth and discussion between council to try and get aligned. My perspective is, from conversations with city attorney, city manager, is that we should pretty much know what we want to do on November 18th with the budget. So I guess there's a process question I've got here, because it sounds a little differently if we can wait until December, but I don't know how much conversation we're going to have as a group, as a city council group, after this meeting and before the 18th or before the December meeting. Does that make sense? I'm trying to get an idea for how much we're sitting here saying these ideas all have merit. It's just different degrees of merit. And is there something that's more important?
So from the budget standpoint, all you are doing is, when you look at it, the available revenues fund balance, there's $811,395. When you approve the budget, you actually don't really approve expenditures line item by line item. You just approve the funding. So there is no reason that you have to get this absolutely correct before you go through. Understanding that if there may not be an agreement, we can always come back at the first meeting of January and begin a more detailed conversation. All that's an easy one for the council just to tell me in the budget that, city manager, we would like you to come back on the council appropriated side to provide us more options or less options or fewer options or whatever options that you would want to do. I don't, yeah, it's part of the budget, but trying to keep y'all at the level of the funding is going to be there. You never do the line items. So it's not like passing a budget without exactly knowing where this is going to stop anything, because it still has to be council appropriated. And we would still come back to make sure, no matter what, even if you approved this, a resolution from the council that would outline, here are the expenditures, so that we can be sure as staff we are in line with the council on these items.
Fair to say that if we had 4 or 5 of these that it didn't look like there was any disagreement on council that they could fund, we can go ahead and move forward with those. If there's ones that, to be fair, Mike could talk about the MRGs, the barriers, if council's interested, we could just delay those too.
Sure. Mike can jump online right now, and I think it might be good just to at least get information going. Tommy, I know you're there. If you could ask Mike to jump on to talk a little bit about that. We have time, so we might as well use it to get the presentation with some of the information that you're looking for.
At some point, I'd like to throw a couple of ideas that are percolating, but they're not fully formed as well. But the ideas that I think have some merit and should be considered for a portion of the lodger's tax. Man, it's DoorDash Mike. Now make him give a presentation right off the bat. Yeah, Mike, it's
Catching breath.
yeah. We're asking about MRGs, Mike, and I know
Yes, sir.
you and I have had a separate conversation on this
Yeah.
one, but so probably just a presentation on the merit between the MRGs and why they're on here, and then anything council wants to ask on.
Okay.
The background on it, Mike, of just how it got on here, what's the purpose that you all see, and why was it recommended to be placed on the item? They just want to have a little more information on them.
Okay. So an MRG is a minimum revenue guarantee. The way it was organically surfaced is it was presented by United Airlines to Tony Vicari as an opportunity to extend the Houston line in winter of 26-27. There were several proposals presented to Tony that included 2 days, 4 days, a full week. And those prices varied from approximately $220,000 up to $1.4 million. We decided that it would be in our best interest to run a pilot for a couple of days. The reason that the MRG for Houston made sense is Houston happens to be the third strongest line at the airport without a 7-day direct line year round. So that includes it's performing better than Phoenix. It's only behind Denver and Dallas. And so in order for us long term to get a 7-day year-round line, we have to seed it, and we have to encourage United with numbers that we can support a winter line. So today they've just extended it for a month in the summer. We do not have numbers for winter, but we're pretty bullish about it. The one thing about a minimum revenue guarantee is it just backstops the line. In other words, we're not paying for it. We're paying a minimum revenue in the event that it doesn't perform well, right? So if it does perform well, some, if not all of that money comes back to us. And so we're essentially an insurance for them to actually create a winter service line. And that would be in a winter of 26 going into 27.
Mike, fair to say that Tony, excellent job at the airport, et cetera, et cetera. He's kind of lukewarm on the MRGs. And is there, what's the risk of a slippery slope here? Not that I'm a big fan of the slippery slope argument, but if United asks, how close is it going to be till American asks and we see more?
Yeah.
If I can on this one, Mike, because I know it's more Tony. I don't know if I wouldn't say that Tony is cautious of MRGs. I think there's a point of pride that we've never had to offer it because all the airlines where we look at, let's look at Grand Junction, they have to offer an MRG. The ability of airlines asking for an MRG would be slim because unless we were asking them to do a new route, because they know there's a market here, there's money here. We're a cash cow if you look at our flights and everything else. So I don't think it brings any type of disadvantage where now Americans can say, well, we want an MRG. They already have a service here. It's established. The MRG is for when you have a new service, I think that as Mike was, that has not been established and the airline is hesitant to do it. You do an MRG so that they will provide that service because they're taking a risk in providing a service that has not been proven out, specifically this being in the winter service, not during the summer. That's the only time that MRGs really come out and are asked for. So I do know Tony was supportive of this because it's going to be the winter. That's usually our slow time, as we all know, and that'd be a time to check it and see if it works. I also think, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of our tourism industry businesses were interested in this because it was an opportunity maybe they saw as expanding their business opportunity in the winter for possible tourism that they would be able to capture that they haven't been able to.
Yeah, a couple, just to add on to that, winter is our slowest season. So this actually is sustainable tourism, whereas we don't need the help in the summer. We do need the help in the winter. The hotel occupancy rate is lowest in the winter time frame, other than shoulder seasons. So this makes sense to actually encourage service in that time frame. The other thing to consider is Houston is actually a gateway to the international market, which is really, really important to us. If we can bolster the international market in the wintertime and then encourage eventually the long-term game plan is to have organic 7-day-a-week, year-long line to Houston, and this is a way to get us there. I think you're right that Tony's pretty proud of the fact that we've never had to do one. But if you look at every single competitor of ours in mountain resort communities, they all have seeded MRGs to make it work. Without exception. So I don't know if I can answer any other questions.
I as one counselor would be obviously real hesitant if they were asking for it during the summer to try a new flight somewhere, something random. This in the winter makes sense. I was approached pre all this by some other businesses wanting this to happen. And so I think it has good support from businesses and our tourism economy, and trying to get more sales tax in the months where we need it. And we don't have it right now. I find this one of those things, and I understand it's $185,000 that we're like earmarking, and so we're not spending right now. And so I understand why you may not want to do that and the hesitation. But for me, I fully support this program, because if it is successful, which we hope it is, we won't spend it. And then next year we get to spend another $185,000 towards something else. Maybe there's something right now that we really want, but we have $100,000 that is sitting there. So,
Opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Let's be
No,
clear.
I totally agree. But I'm just saying that as you wanted feedback from council as to like what I support those, and I support getting us, I think it was like 20%, the Meridian barriers up to like 20%. They're not asking for 100%, over the top perfect. And so that's why I support those two items. I feel like we are getting busier and busier in our Snowdown event and more events, and the safety of our town and our community and our staff. And I think it's super important. And so that's why I support those things, and for those reasons.
Dave?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, what sort of contractual return would we reasonably expect for, if we put this forward, it's a resounding success. Would this be something that they would be like, oh, we're going to do 4 days, for a year? I mean, is there do they like set any sort of contractual, rails in place to like say, we'll sign a year-long contract and you kind of go with it, or they just kind of decide on their own and we're at the whim of whatever they decide?
Yeah, they decide.
Okay.
We can't enter into a future contract with them. They decide, just like they decide to extend the seasonal service by an additional month because of their load factors. So load factors to Houston were outperformed every single other line this year. I think it was an 86% load factor. We're bullish because it would not be on a big plane. It would be on a regional jet. So we think load factors would be healthy. The other point that to Councilor Beal's comment, the tourism industry, the tourism economy entities are willing to put skin in the game. And so there's an additional $60,000 that would have to be met by other entities to match our 185.
Gotcha.
They'd have to do that before the agreement gets signed with the airlines?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've got commitments to do that.
And load factors don't get higher than the high 80s. I mean, that's an incredible load factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody should be expecting that we're getting 100%
No.
load factor. Yeah, okay, good.
And then, and that for how long will the MRG go for? What's it?
I believe it's mid-December through early March.
Through early March.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So, I mean, almost a full quarter of investment to get numbers. Okay. And I assume that will kind of help dictate marketing strategy for Visit Durango and that sort of thing.
We would double down with marketing strategies. We've also asked our strategic partners to double down on marketing strategies as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Yes.
So you said winter of 26. So that means January, or does that mean not till the end of December 26?
It means December of 2026. That's
Okay,
correct.
so a whole year from now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
No other hands, so maybe we should move on.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another question on lodger's tax. The Chapman Hill artwork, I was not quite understanding why that couldn't be paid for through the lodger's tax rather than out of the Parks and Rec capital. It's a capital question, so maybe. but we're on lodger's tax.
I don't know, Kelly, if you may know all that answer or.
Tommy Crosby, Economic Opportunity Manager. I oversee the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture Fund. Discussions we've had over the past couple of years related to this specific piece. It's been Parks and Rec, Economic Opportunity, and the Durango Creative District. We've tried to work towards a dollar amount of what comes first. We put out a call to artists, see what type of responses we get. If we find a piece that we like, we tag 25K, 30K, 50K. Do we match that between arts and culture and Parks and Rec? We haven't quite figured out what the best order of operations would be. As far as precedent that we've set with the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture Fund, we haven't yet earmarked specific funds for a specific art project. We've tend to run everything through the grant program. Doesn't mean that we can't change that up. But at the end of the day, we didn't know order of operations if we want to put out the call to artists, funnel and land on a specific art piece for a specific dollar amount, and then move forward with that. Happy to open those conversations up in 25 or potentially look at how that might impact the grant program of earmarking funds, but brief update of kind of how those conversations have gone. Kelly, if I missed anything, feel free.
Mayor, quick question then, Tommy. There is an ability to sit here and say an $80,000 budget coming out of lodger's tax could be allocated for whatever needs to happen from an artwork and historical marker perspective on Chapman, correct?
If that's council direction, yeah, we can look at the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture budget. Right now, we have it budgeted for in 2026, the Arts and Culture Grant Program, creative business consulting for all of our grant recipients, and contract with the Durango Creative District.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir,
so-
can I,
You
sorry,
got a question?
I don't have a, I'm sorry. It's hard when
I
I'm
know.
like just pops up. Okay. Why would you rather it funded out of lodger's tax versus?
There's substantial extra funding in lodger's tax, and I'd probably rather pay it out of lodger's tax than I would out of the Parks and Rec budget if we can.
Okay,
It just seems to make more sense out of to me.
thanks.
If I may, as far as past precedent for art, and whether it's come out of the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture and council determination, we have used council determination funds to both supplement the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture Grant Program and fund specific calls to artists, such as the Animas River Trail call to artists, and we've supplemented the Santa Rita investment in art, and that has been drawn from council determination into the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture Fund to supplement specific projects outside of the grant program.
Great. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. And are we moving past lodger's tax right now?
Y'all tell me.
I have one more question. Just council, I didn't know when in the list of options, I brought it up at the council budget retreat but allocating the 100,000. I'm open to that number, but just saying this would be something that we would kick into 2026 for unmet needs that we didn't necessarily think about right now. So I'm not sure what council thinks about that idea or not, but my goal would be to include that as one of the options here.
Would it be, oh God, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Pushing the button. Well, it was also just an additional request for funding for the lodger's tax. So it was like an additional item. Is it appropriate now to mention that?
So to try to assist, study session, way less structured. So feel free, this is that time to have those discussions and questions. So I want to make sure that you feel free. I think the only thing and I see Mark here and I want to make sure that I get it, that you can't do is give direction or vote on anything. So ask questions. I'd like to have this. That's why we have 2 hours. Want to make sure for those that are new and those that are here to be able to kind of dig in a little bit. I don't mean it to feel, and I don't want you to feel like, well, we can't ask anything until it gets to first consideration. By all means, Counselor, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. So my request would be, additional transportation to and from the airport. I know that has been discussed a number of times. Does that come from transportation? Does it come from the airport? I just know of many people that have been stranded and not able to get to the airport because there's no transportation to and from, myself included. I don't, where might that go if I know we've had a couple of discussions about transportation to and from the airport. Is that something that could be used here?
There is. I would tell you, and I'm going to have Sarah, if you don't mind, kind of coming up to talk about the operational challenges and the expense for that we would go through. There's been a lot of discussions regarding transportation. It seems like it's an easy thing to do, but when you really look into it, it becomes very costly and very difficult to perform. But I'd like to have Sarah kind of provide some of those details for you, Counselor.
Thank you. Yes, Sarah Hill, Transportation Director. Excuse me, I'm kind of fighting off something. No, I'm not contagious. Sorry. Working through some stuff. And honestly, Tony Vicari is the best suited to have this conversation because he understands the actual need and use from the airport perspective. Excuse me. I can say that one of the biggest issues that we have when we look at providing a service is almost the need for a 24-hour service based on how early our flights leave, how early people need to be there, how late they operate. And then also our catchment area is regional. So we could pick up people and then where are we taking them? And so we're looking at really, really expensive, long transit service. There is a regional transit council here in our region, and they have requested funding from CDOT to look at a feasibility study. They will be looking at all of Cortez service, Pagosa Springs service, private service, public service. That's their request. I would recommend that we go through a process like that as a partner with the Regional Transit Council, since they already are interested in looking at putting together something like that if we are interested in pursuing a public service to the airport. We don't have a cost estimate at this time because there's so many variables about what that transit service would look like, but I can tell you that it would be very expensive and it would take resources away from our current Durango transit service. Excuse me.
If I can add just a couple onto that, Sarah, I've had conversations with Tony specifically on this. I know Councilor Coso has also had an interest in this area, so I know a little bit about it. I think one of the biggest points to touch on, and I'm going to say around percentages, but could be wrong, so plus or minus 10%, but I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40% of our traffic identifies themselves as Durango. The hard part with that is Durango is not identified as within city limits or not. So somebody could be at Edgemont Highlands and say, I'm in Durango. Somebody could be at Glacier Club and identify as Durango. All of those parts of those statistics would make it very difficult for us to say that 40% of the traffic comes from Durango. The cost is another one that is a significant barrier. Tony's been in conversations with a carrier that is actually looking to provide this transportation. Right now, cost is a little bit of a portion in their preliminary talks. With Tony, they said that their operational cost to charge for that service would be $60 each way. When you look at the airport, at a parking day, I think it's $10 going to be now. If you're, that's $120. So if you're only here, under 12 days, it's going to be cheaper for you to probably park. And I think that's kind of where Sarah was going, that the operational side of that cost requires a significant cost to go. And so that's a private carrier that was looking at doing it, was saying that their operational cost per person would need to be about $60 a trip. So doesn't mean it's a no-go. I just think it's a little more complicated than just we can have some funding and it'll happen. I definitely think with some more discussions, possibly CDOT, maybe somebody who's able to take a look at the entire catchment area, that may becomes more profitable and maybe the costs go down a little bit.
And we also have, Tony and I have had some conversations with the Durango Area Lodgers Association, Hospitality and Lodgers, and there may be some interest from some of the hotels to actually resume running their own shuttles out to the airport as well, which they did pre-COVID.
Yeah, I just would love to weigh in. I mean, I've watched for decades as different transportation companies have tried to make this work. One of my focus in trying to lean into the conversation was really to start saying, what do we do to try and subsidize somebody, and think through that idea of subsidization so that they get a year to get people familiar with the idea and get a legitimate effort to make it a viable business opportunity. So, my goals are around a private-public partnership, not us running shuttles ourselves and our drivers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm far more interested in supporting a private, but I think there are multiple ideas on the table, and I hope we keep pursuing them. I think this leans into our sustainability goals. It leans into goals around the airport and the fact that we're in a deadly spiral of just building more parking lot, it filling up, us building more parking lot. Now we've got too much wastewater. We got to upgrade the wastewater plant, et cetera, et cetera. So it serves a lot of purposes, and I hope we can continue to put some work on that.
So real quick, Sarah, thank you. I assume there's been exploration of a park and ride, maybe using the south part of the transportation center parking lot that doesn't really get used that much to be a hub.
Yeah, for specific to the shuttle to the airport.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of like, where is there capacity potentially for?
We would be more than happy to kind of help coordinate something like that. I know that Roadrunner Transit does offer scheduled rides to the airport, and they request that folks meet at the transit center. That is out there right now. We haven't seen a lot of people using that service, but I mean, that's something, if folks are willing to get themselves to a central location, then absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
That's something we could coordinate.
maybe something to explore in conversations leading forward is, if there is opportunity for the parking lot to be able to be used as an alternative resource.
Yeah, we certainly have the capacity for that there. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to give my thoughts on this. Okay, so the airport does very well, but I'm not certain that there's enough use for a transportation service out to the airport, because it's really cost prohibitive to provide on-demand travel to the airport and back. And usually a party of maybe 2 or 4 going on a trip. To me, it just seems like it probably wouldn't be, we wouldn't get our return on investment here. And that's just my thoughts. Whereas I think that having the 185,000 MRGs would probably be a worthy cause, because we would get a return on investment long term. So that's that.
Jose, sorry, do you think there might be any reticence for doing a transportation service out to, for locals out to the airport, because it could potentially impact parking revenue? Because I know that's a big opportunity for us to garner more revenues. I guess I'm trying to think of like how,
would there be a negative impact to revenues? I mean, there's always a possibility for that. I don't know. And it's an interesting part. I kind of just look, my wife, frequent flyer, that's what she does for her business. She flies all the time. Those that are doing that for business like the ability to have the necessary ability to, like, I don't know when I'm going to fly in, right? Maybe I'm able to bump my flight and come in earlier. Maybe I bump my flight and come in later. And sometimes the hassle of dealing with that transportation becomes more of a sidebar. But I don't think, and I know Tony's probably at his conference somewhere going to like, if we did this, I do not see that there would be like a incredible amount of revenue loss at the airport. I still think those that have made the decision that need the convenience to park there are still going to park there. But I do think that there's an opportunity, sustainability wise, as that is a goal, to maybe offset some of that if people had that option and they were okay with that, that it would be there. I absolutely, I think that. I think when you look at what are some other options that we could do, I mean, if a hotel had a transportation system and they were able to do it, and maybe they wanted to be able to charge some folks that like, hey, if you want to come down at the DoubleTree and join in, we will give you a ride on our shuttle to Offset for like $10 each way. That could also be a possibility where it is that private partnership. People who live downtown can obviously walk down there or get dropped off there. That would also be an opportunity, I think, of looking at a way to partner with maybe a hotel shuttle where they're able to get some revenue to also offset some of that by having people be able to drop off at a hotel and then grab that to the airport.
Great. Thank you so much.
Kip?
I just wanted to add that it costs us millions of dollars to add those parking spaces out at the airport. And so the more we spend the money out there, I mean, there's an offset here that if we subsidize a transport shuttle or we help these things happen, we're saving ourselves from building more parking out there. So environmental problems, wastewater problems, all the rest. And it's expensive to build parking spaces for sure. So thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
Sorry, I did not get the answer to my question about the 100,000 allocated. How do I get that on the list? Is that something that council's interested in seeing as part of the options?
Is that something that would have to be brought up under new business if it's like
And so,
specific like that? Or
so
no?
what I'm trying to make sure I understand,
'Cause
you're
there's
just
already
asking
90.
100,000 that's just kind of left.
So there was a poll that was put out to council about
Sure.
how they would rank the
Yeah,
during
absolutely.
during our budget discussion. I
Mhm.
raised the same issue. There's a couple of items that I would love to get on there, and they just haven't made it on there. So I guess I'm wondering if council's interested in those being other options that we can put within this budget. We've got considerable budget here. Right?
Because
For
we-
sure.
Because we have 98,000. I would just say right now under like reserve, whatever we don't spend.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Like, and it's
It-
98.
It does. I guess I wasn't there because I didn't know about the MRG conversation. Doesn't sound, like that's going to get removed. So I see that, but I guess I also wanted to make sure that council understood that we are purposefully saving something for 2026 for unknown expenses. I think that's a good habit. So
I think kind of what I would look at on this one, and I don't know if I'm getting quite to where you're at, but you have $811,395 available. This only is spending 715, so you actually have about almost close to 100,000 right now that's unencumbered that the council could go back and use at any time. If it's not placed in your budget and you have it, it automatically goes to the fund balance, so the money doesn't go away and stays within your ability to have council discretion. So I typically, budgeting, you want to kind of go away from just holding something there that you may not have an intention to spend and just let it be in the fund balance. And if you decide then that there's something you want to do, we can always do a budget amendment that pulls that money out so that we're doing that when we actually have a project in mind to do so. But that money will still be there.
okay.
All righty, so I have my hand up. So what are your thoughts, Kip, on that?
On other expenses?
Yes.
These are percolating, so I've floated them out and we're just talking about them. But the subsidization for the parking shuttle was certainly one of them. I've always been interested in wayfinding signage. I have spoken with Sarah and that's been brought up numerous times. I think it's an improvement to our parking situation, better guidance to the transit center, encouragement of parking, also wayfinding around town. I think is pretty important and to me would rank higher than some other things. Finally, the Region 9 has hired a grants writer that has a very interesting position. And I was hoping to have some conversation and had a brief conversation already with Mike about the idea of a grants writer that is paid on contract basis to then go after larger grants, whether that's arts and culture, whether that's staff related projects that we've got within our budget, but how in some shape or form do we go after a contract writer that could go after more money? So it would be a multiplier effect.
Is there, do we feel like there's lots of money left on the table because we don't have the capacity to go after grants?
I think that's going to be more of a department by department area because each department kind of handles their own grants. I would say, and I'm going to help a little bit with Gloria as the eyes come, the more grants we get, the more we have to account for it. And there's, especially if it's a governmental grant, more specifically federal, but state, there are usually a plethora of administration and requirements in which we have to do not only for the state, for the feds, but also our own accounting for our ACFR.
Yep.
So I will that doesn't mean it's a no. It's just we have to be cognizant of how many grants sometimes we go through because we may not have the capacity internally to completely manage and account for them every time.
It would be interesting to see, like hear from your directors and staff, like, oh yes, there's these grants, this grant, like we would have gone after, but we didn't have the capacity. And then, because if you're getting all those grants, then you hire another person in finance to take care of the reporting, or, I mean, that's an easy, like what I'm trying to say, but.
For sure. I think from a staff standpoint.
Just do that.
And I don't mean it facetiously, but the easy part is getting the grant.
Yeah.
The hard part is actually managing the grant.
No, I get
because
that.
there's reporting that has to be done, progress that has to be done, submitting reports, and that's usually where we end up getting sidestepped or getting what I would call slowed down because of the reporting requirements that come with grants. So it's a part where it's always good to get grants and get the funding, but the behind the scenes of what you have to do at times to make sure that you're accounting for the grant money is just as tedious, or if not more, than actually applying for the grant.
And then I thought that in the parking master plan or whatever that came out, I thought there was a whole wayfinding, like that was one of the easy wins that we decided to do. Did we do it?
We have installed new parking signs at the transit center that like clarify actual parking options, but there is also a recommendation for more comprehensive wayfinding and parking improvement.
And we didn't
And
do
that
that?
comes with a budget request, which we did make that request, like, I think it was a couple of years ago
Yeah.
for lodger's tax, and then it ended up using that funding for something different, but.
We didn't approve it? I could have swore we approved, and we wanted all the signs to get there. Maybe I approved it and everyone else did it because they're not here anymore. So we can just blame them that we're here.
Didn't we work in concert with BID on some of that as well?
Yeah, so the current wayfinding signs that we have are like the green with the red trim, and that was in conjunction with BID maybe 15 years ago, something like
That's
that.
back with Kunkel.
20 years
That
ago.
was a long time.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, the destination management plan also recommended that we kind of work together as interdepartmental team and also interagency with what was Visit Durango at the time, and kind of do like a more comprehensive trails, parking, downtown amenities and things.
Yeah, and I just want to underline parking on that. I mean, that is the number one issue we get the most complaints on. So, what are we doing to try and ease some of those parking concerns and point towards it? All of these ideas were percolating. I did not have a fully cooked, meal to serve to council on this stuff, but I do like this venue and this ability for us to just say, here's my thoughts and get the feedback from
Kip says,
everybody.
I want to do that. And I say no. And Kip says, I want to do that. And I say no.
I love that. I love this. It's like my house. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. What was this public? Thank you for your patience.
And just to clarify, so staff has suggested that we come back at a later meeting, say January, to clarify the proposals. It sounds like we went through a lot of the questions that council had. Is there still a desire to do that with the 96,000 that's remaining? Yes.
Do we want to are there for sure things that we want to commit to, or are we just going to leave this all infamous? And
The hard part is, I think it goes to, you can't commit here in study session to it. So what I would say is, if anybody does not agree with this, or there's certain things that they want to pull out, that maybe at the first consideration, there's an amendment or a clarity amendment that goes with the motion that says bring these back in January to have a full discussion as how they're outlaid.
That would include ideas that we have that are still, we think have some merit, that we'd love to have this kind of a discussion around.
That would definitely include that, but try not to be too prescriptive. But if there's anything on here that you're like, absolutely, let's go forward with, we can do so. I would personally, I think it's easier because this is council discretion, is that we would come back with a resolution at the first meeting of January that lists out these projects, that this is what we're going to fund. And if there's anything that you all want to just take off of that, then let's just do that in January, because that's an easy resolution to go for. And then we can come back and say, on part of that, of direct the staff to come back with more options. So at least we know these are what staff recommended. The resolution in January, you can have that discussion. I want to take this one off. I want to go forward with this one. Because I do think things like childcare, we want to make sure that we get on with. So I think it's an easier way to have that discussion and kind of get that part going. So we would bring it back at the first meeting in January.
Not sure I'm totally clear. So if we can't take a vote during this meeting, so we can't say these 5 are goes.
That's correct, right, Mark?
We can take that vote when? To give you direction that this is that these are.
So
goes.
what
Does
I
that make
would
sense?
do,
Next meeting.
you could,
Okay.
that gets a little bit dicey because we don't really get into the expenditure side of it.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, I still need to make sure that what I spend it on is documented by this council that it's what it was intended to do. So January, the first meeting in January, I would come back with a resolution that says, okay, this has been appropriated through the funds. Here's what we think that the council determination fund would be. That's a resolution authorizing these as the expenses for the council appropriated portion. At that meeting, you all can amend, take, cut, discuss, move on, say right now, just go forward with one and go from there. But I think that's the time to have that discussion. Putting it in the budget side, I think it's a little bit more complicated as to, I want this, I don't want that, in terms of a bigger funding of the budget.
I just got to share that I think this process is just laborious. I mean, I guess I don't understand why we can't have some kind of a conversation where we get to consensus on what goes forward on lodger's tax, what's still under consideration, and do we want to have that consideration at the tail end of 2025 before budget approval, or do we want to leave it as reserve? That's the conversation in 2026.
Because remember, in budget, you're just funding by the fund.
Yeah.
There is no expenses. You're not going to say like, I want to take $1,500 off of office supplies here or anything else. You're just funding it. It just provides the dollars that goes in through it. The expenses at that point, the council from an expenditure side doesn't do the expenditures. That comes to my portion once it gets funded. So that's the part of, this is your line item. Your line item is not really within the budget. These are the projects that we've gone through, and it comes back as an ability to say, here are the items that we see that you want to fund to have more discussion. What you're doing in budget is just funding that there's a council determination line item at $811,395.
Yeah, Jose, I think we're just disagreeing that I'm really looking for conversation amongst council on what their priorities are. You're trying to get a budget passed, and I get the difference between those two things. But there still seems to me not to be a very smooth process here where we can have the conversation of what we want out of this list, what we might also add. So I feel like I'm bogging us down and we're saying the same thing, but I understand what you're trying to accomplish.
I think the conversation is not with the budget, because the budget doesn't do the expenditures. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not, in my point, that I don't think you're quite,
Okay.
my part is that conversation comes in January once it's funded of council, how do you want to spend it now?
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
to make it kind of flow a little bit is that like we're budgeting, figuring out the budget, and some of these things are important. We do now, like the Economic Development Alliance childcare. They need to know what they have to spend next year. But some of this stuff, like I don't know, my guessing is Meridian Barriers and even the program for local employees, that doesn't happen until the summer. You know what I mean? We're not spending that money till the summer. So in January, when it comes time to be like, okay, now we're spending the money, now we can be like, wait, we want to add in and do, I mean, if there's big things, I guess, that you want to bring up to council that would need to be like this childcare investment deal, then under new business, be like, I want to add it. It's important. Let's talk about it. And then either you get crickets by us and that's your cue, or we support it. Does that make sense? It's like budget, spend.
Was told November 4th was the time to have this discussion. And this was and I got to November 4th with my list of stuff, and basically we got presented the slide, and the slide is determining what we're moving forward with or not. And I haven't had a process of 2 or 3 meetings maybe with council to sit there and say, here's some ideas I got. What do you think? Yes, no, down, move item 5 down to item 8.
I also think you're missing that they are the experts in knowing what the strategic plan is. We set that for them, and they know that. And now they are using the ballot language for what they think would best fit for us. Now we can push back a little bit and say, I want this, I want that. Oh, what about this? This is something I've heard. But I don't think it's really our job to bring all the little things forward at first.
Childcare was brought by us from the election. The winter air service was brought by United Airlines in an ask that it was never on anybody's
Right, those are projects, but they fit into our strategic plan is what I'm saying. And so that when the staff sees that and the city manager sees that, then they start to put it in to where it goes. You know what I mean? And then we can add more and change it, but I feel like it's a process that it has to flow. If you're constantly worried about spending the money before we've budgeted the money, it's like kind of backwards a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know.
I also will just go and I'm going to look at Mark. The system in which y'all operate does not allow too much for a free flowing discussion and decision. And I'll let Mark go to that. I mean, because a lot of what I think the confusion or maybe the frustration is coming from is you're very confined with the system in which you are because of how it's set up. And I'll let Mark kind of talk about like how that works. It is the system.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating for people coming from the private side or newly elected officials because it's a different type of budget process than you use at home or using your business. But the charter is very specific. This is not a city council budget. This is the city manager's budget, which is approved by the city council. It is one of your primary functions to approve it, but the entire expectation of the charter is that the city manager has to design that budget. It has to be reconciled with you guys and the public, and then you guys approve it. Now, of course, you can refuse to approve it, and that's happened in Colorado where there's been city councils just refuse to approve a budget that a city manager proposes, and you can get really stuck in the mud and not work well together when that kind of stuff happens. So it's frustrating, but it's because of the charter. And you were told that this is the time to start discussing these things, and you absolutely should, because now the public knows and your colleagues know that there are certain things in the budget that you'd like to tweak. And your opportunity to do that, you do have it. It's at the time that you have the council. You could offer an amendment at the time of consideration. You could convince councilors to call a special meeting to make those changes beforehand. So you have options to do it. But unfortunately, it's frustrating, but this is the process that the charter gives us.
You know, it took me a while to get used to this system too, but we are funding by fund. And like, okay, so like the free fare for the summer's been there, community events transit's been there, parking for local employees been there. And we have funded the barriers before. So the new ones here are La Plata Childcare and the Winter Air Service. So most of these are already in our strategic plan, which is how we fund things. And we go forward to make sure that one counselor doesn't have free will over the budget, because we're all striving for the same thing to make the city of Durango really functional. And it is frustrating, but you still have opportunities. Three votes.
Understood.
Unless you get 3 votes.
John McCain.
Thank you, Gloria.
Okay, the next strategic goal area is safety and quality of life. The departments that we had updates were in the police department and the community support services. The updates actually zero out between these two departments, so they have no overall effect on the budget numbers. These updates were discussed with council at the budget retreat related to the animal shelter. And because the changes had occurred right before that retreat, we did not have time to change the numbers at the budget retreat. So we have made those updates now. So this includes the police department assuming the protection side of the contract, as well as moving the additional requested funds to the police department to help offset some of the budget cuts that they had made. The next goal area is reliable infrastructure and community connectivity. And the area that we updated in the expenses is to the Public Works Department. These were actually corrections. So it was discussed, Finance mentioned at the budget retreat that there were many positions whose allocation distribution had changed during the budget cycle. And we were working on these corrections, but did not have the update ready as well at the budget retreat. But we did find in the reconciliation review that in the software, some of these distributions were being duplicated. And so these corrections have been made. And the process to really complete this extensive review of the workforce has been previously during reconciliation, but we do plan to improve that process to move that up and have a goal of having this completed before the budget retreat next year. So there's a decrease to the sewer fund in $136,622 and a decrease to the water fund of $280,597. So this slide, so we're showing the adjusted 5-year forecast for the water fund here. We do show the total revenues of $7.8 million, the total operating expenses of $7.8 million. The capital expenses have not changed as those were $4.9 million, and leaving an ending fund balance of $1 million. This is in the water fund. And the sewer fund 5-year forecast, the revenues for 26, $10.5 million. The operating expenses, $9 million. We do not have any capital expenses in the budget for 26, as mentioned at the budget retreat. And I'm sorry, my fund balance is cut off, but we are meeting our reserve of 1.2 million or 1.25 million for that is included, required by the bond covenant. The next goal area is the engaged and informed community. We actually did not have any updates to this goal area. So we'll move on to strategic workforce development. We did have an update to the risk management fund. The adjustments shown here are an increase to expenses of $229,432. We did talk a lot at the budget retreat regarding the workers' compensation and liability insurance. We had received those estimates in time to make those changes for the budget retreat. However, we did, and going back through reconciliation, we did adjust the amount of estimated claims, and that's what that adjusted number reflects. So that is the end of the adjustments, and really we just have the updated operating fund summaries. Go back one. So just in summary, the general fund revenues increased by $65,000, expenses increased by $107,107, and net revenues over expenses decreased by $42,107 with an ending fund balance of $14,163,436, which is at 25% of expenses, meeting our reserve policy requirements. Housing fund expenses increased by $537. Lodgers fund expense increased by $402,922, and this is made up of the $38,300 in the arts and culture and the $364,622 in council determination funds. The water fund expenses decreased by $280,597. The sewer fund expenses decreased by $136,622. Airport revenues increased by $184,771. Self-insurance revenues increased $153,600. Risk management expenses increased by $229,432. And in all funds, overall revenues increased by $403,371. And expenses overall increased by $322,242, with an increasing net revenue over expense by $81,129. So this brings our total operating budget to $134,564,934, and ending operating fund balance of $44.2 million. And this is the capital fund summary. There were no changes to the capital funds.
All right. Oh, can we get some questions? Yes. Okay, so I'm curious. Okay, so on the sewer and water fund 5-year operating forecast, was the 10% and the 20% added into this forecast?
Yes, they were included at the budget retreat
Okay, great.
already.
Thank you. And also, I remember earlier we had a discussion about reducing the reserve fund from 25 to 20%. Did we do that or not?
We did not make any changes as that is the required reserve now. We may come back at a later time and discuss that with council further if desired.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think you actually asked my same questions, but let me just expand a little bit. It's a 10% increase, and then you said 20. I thought it was just 10.
10%.
There's 10% in water, 20% in sewer.
And that's already determined, or that's what we're determining here? Or I understood a 10 and a 10,
No.
like a total of 20, or well, 10 for water, 10 for sewer.
That was not what was presented at the retreat. At the retreat, it was 10% for water, 20% for sewer. You may have been thinking on the sewer side, there may have been because it was 10% for operating and 10% for capital, which made 20% for sewer, and then 10% for water. As we discussed earlier today, it's not determined yet. This is what's built on to make our budget proposed. You will see on your introduction of ordinances, there will be for the operating budget, the annual budget, and then there's another ordinance that would actually set the increased rate. So all three of those obviously would have to pass. If the water rate and sewer rate did not pass, then we would have to make a adjustment to our sewer fund immediately in our operating by cutting 10%, and then we would not have any capital expenditures in the sewer fund.
Okay. And so once that happens, should it be approved, is that, and so we don't have a graduated increase plan? No. So we're just going to go straight to the 10, straight to the 10, 20, and then adjust as if we need to.
Right.
I guess I was hopeful that there would be an opportunity for some type of a graduated increase. That's not what we're looking at.
I think long-term, we are having a study so we can see how much we can raise the rates based upon historical data. So that will be coming in the future.
Because I know we're waiting for a master plan. So I was hoping we were going to wait for the master plan and then make this decision, but that's not the timeline we're on, I guess.
Well, we haven't raised our rates in a few years. So the gradual portion was not, we don't have that ability. The master plan would not be finished until the spring of 27. So if you didn't do anything until then, that'd be another budget year cycle outside of that. I think Bob did a great job. I think he's over here of talking about at the retreat, spending a good time about our infrastructure needs. I think he highlighted the situation with infrastructure over 100 years old and the necessity of us being able to continue to provide operations and provide running water and sewer services for our city. I think when you also look at the Florida pipeline that's needing to be replaced that we're under design, I think that the case that the staff made at that retreat spoke volumes and justified the need for the increases.
Okay, so we're and is there a way that we notify the public that that's coming? Do we have marketing plan or marketing dollars? I hate for people to, from one month to the next have this big increase.
We do let them know. I would also say that after the retreat, the Herald did a front page article story about it to the citizens, talking about the increase, talking about where they were at, and talking about the average portion of it. Once it gets approved, we can definitely add on to that. But there definitely was a newspaper article front page about this coming on and being considered.
Okay, thank you for that. I know it's a lot at one time. So I feel like in all my years, I have never seen such a big increase at one time. So it gives me pause. I understand the need, but that's a lot for the voters or for us to put on our constituents at one time. And I also just wanted to ask again about the reserve fund, because I thought perhaps we had the potential to go as low as 15% on reserve. And since we're not using our reserves to bond, is that correct? to, I mean,
You would never use your reserves to
to a
bond.
request for leverage to do additional projects?
To leverage
Yes.
for bonds, or are we talking something?
For general obligation bonds.
We
No, we don't do that here. I think that's why I'm thinking we don't need a high reserve because we're not using it for debt service.
So yes, if when you look at your fund balance is always looked at because it's part of your entire picture of your financial health. We pledged our sales tax revenue, so our fund balance with regards to our general fund doesn't help us in regards to bonding or indebtedness. It really helps us with our credit rating. The council has passed a policy that requires a general fund. There's a requirement for a general fund balance of 25%. So we are following the policy that's been adopted by the city council in the general fund side of it. And I don't know if we're talking the general fund portion or in regards to water and sewer, because that's what we were discussing
I'm
right here.
sorry. No, I was thinking more general fund. I guess my request would that we would have as low as a reserve as we can stand, but it looks like we're already by ordinance 25%.
But it's just by a policy that was adopted. I think we had a conversation here just a few minutes ago that that was something we talked at the retreat, that we would come back to council and revisit and maybe look at a range. However, we would, with this budget, we are complying with the 25% fund balance, and we'll continue to do so until the council decides to change the fund balance. I think we presented pretty good comparable cities during the retreat that showed that fund balances range anywhere from 18 to 25%. I think with only a couple being at 25, it seemed the more applicable one was 20. But that was something that we wanted to take care of after this budget was approved and come back to council and have a thorough discussion of what the council feels comfortable on.
Okay, so after we approve the budget, we'll have that discussion. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the only remaining piece was just the budget process timeline. Today we had the reconciliation of the budget. Later on this evening, we will have the introduction of those ordinances and public hearing. On November 18th will be the first consideration of the budget ordinances. On December 2nd, we will request adoption of the budget and the mill levy certification. And that's the end of my presentation. Any further questions? Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the grant programs update.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council. Tommy Crosby, Economic Opportunity Manager. Here today to present on 2 grant programs that are being considered for funding at tonight's regular meeting. One of the 2 grant programs you should be quite familiar with at this point in the year. It is the Renew Grant, dollar for dollar matching grant that the city offers up to $5,000. Facade improvements, new signs, repaving parking lots, etc. A new grant that you're being presented with tonight that has been consolidated with the Visit Durango merger and the city's existing sustainability Green Durango grants is the Impact and Resiliency Grant. As a reminder of how these grants are reviewed, they go and are first vetted by staff. They're then brought to an external committee of subject matter experts, and then they're brought to City Council for final approval on your regular meeting agenda. A little bit of context and background on the Impact and Resiliency Grant. It's looks at community focused projects that contribute directly to Visit Durango and the city's sustainability and resiliency goals and strategic plan alignment. Businesses, community organizations, and nonprofits are all eligible to receive this funding. And it's about a soft cap of roughly $20,000. Projects outside of those dollar amounts are considered. They just require clear alignment with Visit Durango and City of Durango sustainability priorities. These tend to look like climate and environmental work, the impacts of mitigating the impacts of tourism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then workforce and product support depending on the project. And the funding source for this is both the lodgers tax, sustainable tourism marketing dollars, and a portion of the city's sustainability fee. And like I mentioned, this combines the city's what used to be known as the Green Durango grants and what used to be known as Visit Durango's Destination Advancement Grant into the new Impact and Resiliency Grant. So to provide a high-level grant summary for our Renew grant, there's 2 projects on the docket tonight for just over $3,900. And for the Impact and Resiliency Grant, 11 projects were considered. I believe there are 6 being funded at just over $62,000. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about either of these grant programs, but all the details will be in your regular meeting packet.
Tommy, just a quick question. I was having a hard time connecting Maria's Literary Foundation, the grant for those guys. If we could just take time now so I don't mess with the consent agenda.
Sure.
How does that connect back to the lodgers tax applicable funding here? And I love the foundation. Don't get me wrong. I didn't have the connection.
Sure. If it's okay, I'm going to ask Waylon Ryan, one of the administrators of this program, to be able to answer specific about grant by grant allocations for the Impact and Resiliency Grant.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
If I get this wrong, please correct me because I've never done this. So Waylon Ryan, Destination Development and Sustainability Strategist.
Wow. A little round of applause.
Okay. So yeah, thank you on that question for Maria's Literary. So one of the things is that it has to be tied to tourism in some sort of way. Part of this programming is event orientated. And so they're pulling people from outside of our region. Technically a visitor is anyone defined without that lives outside a 50-mile radius. So they're looking at pulling in people from various areas through these events that they're holding. And this is part of that grant. So a big target on like the Navajo Nation, for example, right? So bringing in families that serve those areas. So that's why it's on there. Again, that's how it's tied to tourism, is they're bringing outside visitors in, and hopefully while these various people are here for these events and other items around this, that they're, spending money locally.
Perfect. Thanks. Connected the dots. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Tommy.
Mayor and Council, I do want to apologize. I left out accidentally the new agenda item discussion, just because we had that at the last study session, and just in my mind, I missed it for this one, but there should have been an item for new agenda to have that discussion. It was not intentional, and we'll make sure to place it into the next study session at the end of the item.
Sorry. So trying to ask, sorry, Jose, I'm getting a little
That's okay.
confused. We're trying to ask, like, I've got new business for the council meeting. You and I talked about that, polling the city council, but that still belongs in the.
That would belong in the new business portion. If you recall because we have study sessions at different cadence.
Yeah.
Last month, we had an item that was just new agenda where you all could discuss new agenda items that you're possibly thinking of and have that discussion.
Okay.
And it was I missed it. I just forgot to place it on the agenda to have it at this meeting. I didn't want you all to think that it had gone away.
Okay.
I just didn't put it on this one, and we'll make sure to have it on the next one.
Thanks for the clarification.
You bet.
I do not.
Okay, well then, if there's no questions, we're adjourned. Or I don't even know if we're adjourned since it's a study session.
Dinner will be here at 4:45, 5 o'clock still. So if you want to hang around, more than welcome. Want to chat, we'll be here. Absolutely.